All right. Hey guys, Liana here. Yes, I'm gonna tackle this one. I admit, I thought about not doing it. It's a minefield. And first I thought, no good can come from this. And then I thought, no, you know what? Some good could come from this. So I'm gonna talk about it. And you have the nice Hearthstone ad. Hearthstone gets some free advertising just because they advertised on the one article I could find with a neutral headline about this issue, and that issue is Pillars of Eternity community debating the validity of an in-game trans joke. That is an accurate statement of what's going on. And some of the larger sites that covered this did not have quite so neutral a headline, and I wasn't going to use those because what I'm trying to do in this discussion is try to keep this on something of an even rational keel and explore all sides instead of just attacking people, because there's been enough of that. So let me explain the basics of what has turned out to be an exceptionally complicated issue. And then we'll dig in, okay? But everybody's got to stay calm with this, or we can't have dialogue, we can't have understanding, we can't have learning. I am begging everyone to keep an even keel and not have a knee-jerk reaction to anything I say, okay? So what happened? Those of you who are aware of the Kickstarter process, Pillars of Eternity is a Kickstarter-funded game. It's an old-style isometric RPG with larger party structures, and, you know, it's more like the old Baldur's Gate, Icewind Dale, Planescape Torment games. Because there are people like me who like these games, and I fully intend to play this game once I can finally get, you know, the Patreon money comes in for this month and I can finally put that new video card in and start streaming this stuff so I can share with you guys. And so as part of that Kickstarter process, there are incentives to backers. And apparently at the $500 mark, people could have their own little, I think they were tombstones, but their own little basically advertisements. A space in the game to put what they wanted. And all of them break game lore. They're all, you know, they're Easter eggs, so to speak, of Kickstarter backers. They don't affect the plot at all, from my understanding. Now, this one raised some eyebrows and started a whole internet war, because it says, "Here lies Firedorn, a hero in bed. He once was alive, but now he's dead. The last woman he bedded turned out to be a man, and crying in shame, off a cliff he ran." And personally, I'm offended by the bad meter in that poem, but that's me being snarky. Please don't take that seriously. People insisted that this comment was transphobic and transmisogynistic. Complained to the developer. The director, Josh Sawyer, handled it in what I thought was, you know, the textbook way. Thank you for your feedback, we're looking into it. That caused a backlash to the backlash, with people saying, you take this out, I want my money back. I don't believe in the morality police having the right to censor games because they don't like them. Those are the two extremes, and it's gone, you know, the word censorship is cropped up. Pretty big names in gaming, like Jim Sterling and Total Biscuit, have weighed in and, you know, talking about this is a sort of attitude to get trans women murdered, and there's been some really, really heavy accusations and some really inflammatory language over, this is it, guys. This is the entirety. What you're looking at here, this is the entirety of the game content for reference. Now, if you want to argue that any transphobia, any transmisogyny is too much, that's a valid viewpoint to have, and good, you're consistent, right? It's just that there are greater contextual issues, background to this, that I think it's important to explore. And I don't even know what I think about this thing right now, because I tend to just not make up my mind on situations like this when they get so heated, because let's face it, it doesn't matter what I think. I'm not a trans woman. And, you know, now I am a creator, despite what some people will say. And I have done risque content that some people found offensive. So I guess I have a horse in this race in that way. But, you know, I'm just hesitant. My thought is, what the hell do I think? It's their game. They can put what they want in their game. I'll choose to play the game or not based on what I see. That's my part of the process as far as I'm concerned. But I will admit, I am not an expert on transgendered issues. I have some anecdotal experience. You know, I've got friends who have family members who are transitioning. I've got transgendered friends. You know, friends are... What's a friend? How do you define a friend? I don't see this person very much, but I am fond of them, and they are genderqueer. And then I used to run events where transgendered people attended, and there were those moments where, you know, they had to email and say, you're going to get a payment notification from this person. That's me. That's just my legal name. They haven't let me change it yet. And of course, it was a man's name when it was a woman. And we, you know, then they'd show up dressed like a woman because they are a woman. That's their gender identity. And a couple people would go, what's going on there? And, you know, I'd be the one that had to say they are transgendered, they are transitioning. And the minute you say that, people are like, oh, all right. I just wasn't sure what that was. Because, in the circles I run in, there's a lot of different lifestyle things, and they're like, is it cosplay? Is it, are they actually transgendered? Are they just looking for attention? Because some people do, where they lost a bet or something like that, so they have to wear a dress at a public event. Like, and that's that whole, trans misogyny angle that some people complain about. And it's subtle. It's people don't like the word minor, but it's not going out and bludgeoning someone to death. And it is true, in preparation for this very uncomfortable video, I did go out and I did do some research, and the crime issue with trans women being murdered is the viciousness of these particular crimes, right? They're not one gunshot. They're stabbed multiple times, or they're beaten beyond recognition, things like that. They are highly, highly violent crimes. And, they're horrifying. They're horrifying crimes. And so to me, what is central to this whole debate is whether or not simply displaying an attitude, be it racist, sexist, transphobic, what have you, does that inherently cause harm? Because it is really a pass-fail condition. Video games are an artistic community that upholds the virtues of free speech, right? People should be able to make any game they want, provided it's legal. People will decide to buy it or not buy it. The only time somebody should be censored is if they actually can show this causes harm, right? Or there is a reasonable assumption that it causes harm. It's the same thing I said about, video game feminism. Does it cause harm? No, then leave it alone. Doesn't matter how juvenile it is. Does it cause harm, or does it lead to the causing of harm? Well, then we have to do something about that, right? I don't think anybody argues that 8-year-olds should be playing survival horror games, right? That's gonna mess the kid up. Should kids be playing Call of Duty at 13? Well, the ESRB is a parental thing. They can't buy the game, but it's not illegal to play the game. And I know plenty of teenagers on the younger side of teens that play games that are quote-unquote too old for them. You know, I was at a youth conference over the weekend, and these two kids that the average age was like 16. These kids might have been older, I didn't ask, but they asked me about Spec Ops The Line, and it's like, that's a heavy game. I'm not necessarily sure that even somebody who's, 18 years old can fully understand what that game was going for. Some 30-year-olds don't fully understand what that game was going for. So, kids are growing up very fast, and they are being exposed to this stuff, and they're not turning into murderers. I mean, if video game violence caused people to become violent, then, I played the original Resident Evil when I was like 16 years old, which is too young by modern standards. And yeah, the game gave me nightmares. I will fully admit, I had nightmares after playing the original Resident Evil because I had no idea what I was getting into, right? But I did it to myself, and it's a funny story now. But did it harm me? I don't consider it harm. Some people might. It caused me emotional distress, but that's sort of the point of playing horror games, to get scared, right? So, kinda can't complain about that. This is a different story. People don't get into a sword and sorcery RPG to get, there is social commentary in sword and sorcery RPGs. I can't say that, but people didn't sign up for this, so Now, I don't know if the people complaining have actually played the game. I don't know if they've judged it in context. I'm a bit concerned that this much of a big deal is being made out of something that is just like this. I mean, I don't believe that there is any such thing as a perfect game. I have not come across one yet. Even games I absolutely love, there are moments where it's like, meh, come on, that's cheesy. Or did you really have to do that? I mean, I love the game Planescape Torment, but the Fall from Grace character bugged the hell out of me. The whole thought hooker thing, I found that really cliche. I didn't like the character. I didn't like having to have her in my party because she was the only cleric. I liked Anna, but some people disagree with me. Some people didn't like Anna because she was scantily clad, and that's the way RPGs work. There's something for everybody, right? They challenge you in that way. Some characters you're gonna like, some characters you don't like, and part of the fun is, to me, talking about which characters you liked and which characters you didn't like and why not, and that's part of the joy of being a gamer, to me. And it seems like, do I like this particular element of Pillars of Eternity? No, it's juvenile, but I kind of understand that, okay, whoever this is gave Obsidian $500 to fuck around. And they did that. And they probably laughed, and they're probably laughing their butts off right now because it's a potential troll move, right? And I can understand Obsidian being very cautious about what they censor from backers, especially people who are giving them money. It's a tough one. As an editor, I have been in situations where I have to decide whether or not to veto something, and it's never fun, right? I fought a particular story hard once because the central premise, the whole story hinged on the idea of menstrual blood being disgusting. Not that the main character found it disgusting. The story in my opinion, found it disgusting. And I felt like that was not good writing. That was lazy. The writer wasn't distinguishing between what the character thought and what the story thought. And so I was like, no, not that one. But there are other things where it's like, I find this moment personally distasteful, but I kind of think that, you know, I think that is me, that is my sensitivities. There was another story that I pushed for, even though, you know, the main villain was a lesbian. And I was like, well, you know, gay people should be allowed to be villains as well as heroes. They should be inclusion first. I am a big inclusion first person. So when something like this happens, I would prefer to talk about it as opposed to pull it out of the game. My ideal situation, which is not going to happen, we're beyond that point right now because it's already gotten far too nasty. But what I would like to see is, and that's not fair, this is happening in places, but I would like to see this content stay. Because they got paid for it. This is no different for me than watching The Good Wife, which is all about, you know, female empowerment, a woman kicking ass and taking names, and then Old Navy ads run during The Good Wife, being catty about a woman's dress at a wedding. Like, the two messages are counterproductive, but hey, they're the sponsor. We all understand how the advertiser-supported revenue model works. We watch the ads that nobody really wants to watch in the first place, except for that occasional really awesome commercial that are, you know, genius. But, you know, most of the time we don't want to watch commercials. We watch them because we understand they're paying for the content that we are getting for just the cost of subscribing to whatever delivery service, right? There is in question. So, did my controller turn off? No, it didn't. Okay. But this is the same to me. This is essentially an in-game advert. And I mean, maybe Kickstarter funded games now have to put a little thing on it so people are aware that, and maybe they did. I don't know. Maybe the game makes it clear that this is in fact what it is. I haven't been able to play this content yet. So, but maybe there has to be a little, like, Kickstarter backer thing in Kickstarter funded games. But I don't know. I don't think we can take something like this as in-game, as canonical content, right? And I think it's much more beneficial in the long run to talk to people instead of yell at them. Because a lot of people don't understand trans issues. I'm still learning. And I've made a choice to continue to care, even though I've had some bad experiences with rabid trans activists, but I've had some bad experience with rabid activists of any stripe. But I can see a lot of people being put off the whole thing. And this is not a tone argument. I'm going to stop you right there. A tone argument is basically, I can't refute anything you're saying based on facts. I just don't like the way you said it. People confuse the tone argument for actually saying your tactics are wrong. Tone and tactics intersect. There is overlap, but they're not the same thing. In this case, it's not just about how you're saying something. It's about what you're saying. You know, equating something like this with the attitudes that murder trans women, I don't really feel that's accurate. And I say this because trans women are a marginalized group. And if you look at any marginalized group within a larger culture, they all have higher than average murder rates because they are vulnerable. That's why they're called vulnerable. I mean, you can compare the situation to the missing and murdered Aboriginal women in Canada that the government doesn't want to do a task force on. They want it to be a law enforcement issue. Who cares if it's a law enforcement issue? Look into it, right? There should be no dollar value placed on a human life. Unfortunately, dollar values are placed on human lives all the time. That's one of the great tragedies of economic issues, is that governments are in the unenviable position of going, how much is this person's life worth? How much can we afford to spend on it, right? So, homeless people probably die violently above average too. So the mentally ill are more likely to be victims of crime. People think they're perpetrators of crime, but no, they're at a heightened risk for being the victims of crime, mentally ill people. So there's a lot of groups that we could learn to be more sensitive about. Now, does this mean we shouldn't be able to make jokes for fear of being offensive? Well, that's a problem too, isn't it? I mean, Jamie Foxx got in trouble for making comments about Bruce Jenner, and I think that I actually agree with the criticisms of Jamie Foxx, and it's too bad because I like Jamie Foxx as an actor. But I like Jamie Foxx better as an actor than I like him as a comedian, and these things are why, because the thing I have issue with Jamie Foxx is that Bruce Jenner, who he made jokes about doing, a he and she musical number on his own. Cringeworthy, right? We all agree with that. But the big issue for me is Jenner hasn't disclosed that, I don't know what they're identifying as. His kids call him he still, so I'll go with that. He actually hasn't disclosed he's transitioning yet. So I don't think anybody should be making public comments about... Now, it could be the absolute worst kept secret in Hollywood, or it could be the Richard Gere and the gerbil thing, which never happened, but everybody still jokes about it, right? To now, I can't believe that thing hasn't died. I still heard it. But, it's really not right to pick on a real-life person going through a very sensitive process. If in fact Bruce Jenner is transitioning, we have not gotten confirmation of that yet, and that is the issue I have with the Jamie Foxx thing. Also, it was done at an award show where people are supposed to be happy and not necessarily feel uncomfortable, right? But more and more and more, we're getting this insult comedy into award shows, the iHeartRadio Awards or something like that. To me, what Jamie Foxx did is more like the Tim Schafer sock puppet thing in gaming than the Pillars of Eternity thing, because Tim Schafer went after real people in a venue I felt was not appropriate. When you're doing award shows, and I have hosted award shows, I've worked award shows as a producer. People are nervous and nobody really wants to be there that's actually there for, professional reasons. It's all, we gotta go and we're gonna have as much fun with it as you possibly can. But there's a reason people drink so much at those award shows. They are uncomfortable. I had the misfortune of being part of a team that won a Canadian Comedy Award, and it was a voter-driven category, which, is a, not real award in the eyes of people who don't win them. And it was not a happy moment. It was a very awkward moment because there was a better funded show connected to Jason Priestley, and there were a lot of people from that show there, and they did not like us at all because it was this, goofy little, we actually had no budget for this show. We had to fund it out of pocket and got screwed on the back end. But we won an award. You can't eat an award, but I can still say I'm an award-winning comedy writer and performer. Hey, best TV show that year. But, it's not the time or place. That, I can see people's points. So see, I'm not just totally people should be able to say whatever they want, for the record, right? I see why that was hurtful. And I want to distinguish between it being wrong, like morally wrong, and it being hurtful. They're not quite the same thing, right? Because I think if something's immoral, you're doing it either not knowing or not caring that you're causing harm. You can cause harm without meaning to. And I think that's what we're trying to sort out with this. Now, I personally, looking at it, I don't see how this comment could inspire anybody to commit transmisogynistic violence. The Lothario in question here, the big heartthrob, didn't harm a hair on the trans woman's head. If it is in fact an actual trans woman, there's a literary tradition in this going back to the Canterbury Tales, which somebody had to point out to me because it's in the Miller's Tale in the Canterbury Tales, and I missed the dude doing a bait and switch and the big Lothario after the dude's wife kissing a man's butt instead. I missed that because I was too busy giggling at the fart joke. And the whole purpose of the Miller's Tale, for those who don't know, is the Knight's Tale precedes it, and it's all chivalric and lofty, and so the Miller's Tale is actually a story told by a drunken boor. And boor is actually a person. So I shouldn't use that term anymore, because that's not nice. I have a friend who's actually a boor, as in a South African person of that extraction. I should take that word out of my vocabulary. That's not okay. But most people didn't care, did you? And that's sort of the point. I think the vast majority of people who see this are going to kind of go, or, you know, they're going to chuckle a little and go, wow, wasn't that juvenile? Or they're going to snort and say, wasn't that juvenile? Because it is juvenile. There's no, this is dumb. Like, it's really not worth getting angry about. Now, the question is somebody going to go, Pillars of Eternity, I'm going to go kill a trans person? Well, no, right? And there are glorious, glorious works of comedy over the years. You know, All in the Family is a big one. You know, Lenny Bruce, George Carlin. You know, there's also a ton of social justice stuff where a disenfranchised group has to say things that are offensive to the majority to get social change and civil rights moving forward. I mean, the idea that a woman could vote at one point was considered offensive, even to some women, because, you know, it's so much pressure and women shouldn't have to be forced to deal with that pressure. It's cruel to make women vote. Some people believe this at one point. Really, it can get that turned around, and that's why it's so important. You have to be so careful to not have a knee-jerk response to these things, right? And I think that the entire debate about this so far has been a knee-jerk response. And we need to bring it down and actually start having a discussion, because this is a great opportunity to educate people on the phenomenon of transmisogyny and, you know, why it's different from an overall dislike of transgendered people, why trans women are at greater risk than trans men. They're complicated topics, and people have been writing about them for a long time, and this is a great opportunity to kind of go, you know, yeah, this isn't a big deal, but precisely because it's not a big deal, now's a good time to talk about it calmly. Like, you know, okay, this isn't going to hurt anybody, but are you aware that slightly under 1 in 5 transgendered people have reported difficulty seeking medical care? They've faced stigma from the medical industry. It's like 19%, which, okay, isn't the majority, but that's still 1 in 5 transgendered people has had trouble getting medical care because they're trans. These are things we should be talking about. These are, and nobody has to fight with this. People can just absorb the information and go, okay, now I know, and nobody's saying they're a bad person. Because you know what? Not knowing something isn't a moral transgression, right? And like I said, I'm no specific expert on transgendered issues. General women's issues, I feel confident saying I know enough about this to speak about the issue and have my opinions. But I can't experience a transgendered person's experience. You know, I think most people suffer some level of dysmorphia sometimes. I mean, certainly I have felt caged by my gender at times, but I've never felt like, there are times I've gone, God, I wish I was a man. My personality would be so much better suited to being male. But I have never felt like I am, in fact, male, right? Like, it's not the same thing. And I don't know. I think that picking on things like this is just, instead of taking them as learning opportunities, is the wrong way to go, right? I mean, there are websites out there that chronicle the number of murdered transgendered women. That's how I found out about the viciousness of the violence committed against transgendered people. And, you know, there's all this really interesting research being done now about the psychological downside because of trans misogyny, because there is such a big difference in terms of social stigma from going, you know, between going from female to male, which apparently there's, you know, they have an easier go of it. I don't know. This is just what I've read. Like I said, I'm not an expert. Going from male to female, there are big changes, right, in what you can do and where you can go and what you can say at any given time. And I'd imagine, I mean, the studies they're doing, because transgender male, you know, transgender people are a Rosetta Stone to gender theory, aren't they? Right? I mean, we're all waiting for the extended research to come out, because right now it's been quite small. But you know, the reports of trans women have been, yes, they have firsthand experienced what some people would call loss of privilege. I'm trying to avoid saying that because people freak out at that term because it's so poorly applied. But they say that, yes, their own friends who knew them when they were publicly male, right, treat them differently now that they're a woman. They talk down to them and things like that. And or they talk to them differently. And that's compelling research, you know, and these are things we should talk about. And like I said, jury's not out. We're still waiting for better research. But, you know, that is an element of transgendered experience that I can talk about because I've read the studies, because they intersect with my specialty. And the reality is, I think it's really important that we say when we don't know something or we're not experts. You know, like I said off the top, I'm going based on my anecdotal experience, not any sort of specialty in the science or the research into this. I'm only, you know, and I'm owning that because I want to know more. I just would like to learn more without people yelling at me and accusing me of transphobia, because that's happened. I keep asking them to stop. I've explained what happens over and over again. It was a dumb joke involving my dog and a cat, and it was a back and forth on Twitter, and we were trying to, you know, we were trying to do a pro-trans message that all cats are cats. So, okay, if my dog acts like a cat, well, who should deny his species identity, right? But the all cats are cats thing was the punchline, and I was like, that's the answer I'm looking for. We thought we were having a go at the whole stump speech, but in a supportive, you know, in a supportive way. It was not transphobic, but I got accused of transphobia because I said my dog thinks he's a cat. Because my dog does prefer cat treats to dog treats, will get into the cat's food whenever he wants, and uses the scratching post more than the cats do. I'm not kidding. But it was a joke, right? I'm not going to start insisting the vet identify my dog as feline. It's not the same thing. It was, I forget the particular device when you parallel. It was a parallel, right? Not hateful. No fear. But transphobic. I'm a transphobe, according to some people. What do I do about that now? What do I do? Am I supposed to bleed for that? Am I supposed to beg for forgiveness? Am I supposed to pay a fine? Like, what does labeling someone a transphobe do? Focus on the behaviors, not the people. Because by falsely accusing someone of hatred, that is a form of hatred in itself. That shows that people are so angry that they just want to attack. And you have to overcome that. We've seen this in history over and over and over and over again, that warring sides, the longer you war and the nastier you war, you have to overcome that distrust to find peace and rebuild and move forward. And that's where I was trying to come to with this. I'm asking everyone, please, I'm begging you, stop doing that. Video games have a unique ability to teach tolerance, to encourage tolerance, to allow people to come to tolerance by themselves through the interactive experience. They can guide. But people crawl into shells and hide and go, fuck you, when they're attacked for issues they don't even understand. They haven't formed an opinion. And they're being told they're bad. They're bad people. They're phobic. When they don't even know what to think. And like I said, trans education is extremely important. All civil rights education is extremely important. Intersex and transgendered issues are extremely complicated ones. And I really think that if we really want things to be better, we need to show greater patience. So please, all you do-gooders on either side out there, you do not have to, you are not forced to attack someone and say they are a bad person just because they disagree with you. Please stop it, okay? Please. It's not helping. That's getting people hurt now, okay? People are feeling very cut off from communities that once gave them a sense of belonging and a sense of comfort and a sense of safety. People are feeling cut off from that community now because of the fighting. So the fighting needs to stop. Harm is being caused. Social violence is being perpetrated right now. And it can be stopped. So if you really care, if you really are a true believer and not one of these keyboard warriors doing it to show what a good person you are, because you can't show you're a good person through honest means. If you really care about harm reduction, if you really do care about stigma reduction, if you really just care about people as people, stop the outrage theatrics. They are not helping anything. They're not helping produce good art. They're not helping create greater understanding. They're not helping improving the moral fiber and character of our society. They are just making people go into shells. Stop it. I actually am begging.